Thank you. Reverend Leonetta.
Sometimes you have to do a phone check right in the middle of the service. I don't think I have mine, but if I do, I know it will be like a divine calling. If the earth were only a few feet in diameter, floating a few feet above a field somewhere, people would come from everywhere to marvel at it. People would walk around it, marveling at its big pools of water, its little pools of water flowing into ponds. People would marvel at the bumps on it and the holes in it, and they would marvel at the very thin layer of gas surrounding it and the water suspended in the gas. And then the people would marvel and look at the creatures in the water and look at the creatures walking around the surface of the ball. The people would declare it precious because it was the only one, and they would protect it so that it would not be hurt. The ball would be the greatest wonder known. The people would come to behold it, to be healed, and to gain knowledge, to know beauty and to wonder how it could be, and all the mysteries that made it so beautiful. People would love it and defend it with their lives, because they would somehow know that their lives, their own roundness, could be nothing without it. If the world and the earth were only a few feet in diameter. I'd like to move you into a space of meditation. And this means that we would become unencumbered with anything that we're holding, and use your body self, your bodily self, as a place that has a flow around it. So that means uncross your legs, uncross your arms. You may want to put your hands up to feel the energy of the room, or your hands down to just stay within the boundaries of your own energy flow. And if you're comfortable, I would invite all of you to close your eyes. And now the summer months tick away. This week we enjoyed the buck full moon. It was bright, it was beautiful. It changed every 15 minutes as it lifted in the sky. And we are gifted now with these moments of sanctuary and silence. Our minds and hearts are impacted with delights and also disappointments. This week has been full. Breathe fully into this moment, in and out, in and out, and allow those spaces in between to have a no thingness within them. Take your little mental eraser, and as the words and concepts and thoughts come up, just gently erase them to have a space of quiet. Here we have a circular sacred space. There's room for all of us in our no thingness and sanctuary of space for a few moments of complete silence. To take these moments of silence out into our week, I'd like you to join with me after I teach you this short chant. Brother, sister, take your time, go slowly. Listen deep inside yourself. Simple things are holy. Brother, sister, take your time, go slowly. Listen deep inside yourself. Simple things are holy. Brother, sister, take your time, go slowly. Listen deep inside yourself. Simple things are holy.
When I was a boy, each week on Sunday we would go to church and pay attention to the priest, and he would read the holy word and consecrate the holy bread, and everyone would kneel and bow. Today the only difference is everything is holy now. Everything is holy now. When I was in Sunday school, we would learn about the time Moses split the sea in two, and Jesus made the water wine. And I remember feeling sad that miracles don't happen still, but now I can't keep track, 'cause everything's a miracle. Everything's a miracle. Wine from water is not so small, but an even better magic trick is that anything is here at all. So the challenging thing becomes not to look for miracles, but in finding where there isn't one. When holy water was rare at best, it barely touched my fingertips, but now I have to hold my breath like I'm swimming in a sea of it. It used to be a world half there, heaven second rate, hand me down, but I walk it with a reverent air, 'cause everything is holy now. Everything is holy now. Read a questioning child's face and say it's not a testament. That'd be very hard to say. See another new morning come and say it's not a sacrament. I tell you that it can't be done. This morning outside I looked, I saw a little red-winged bird shining like a burning bush and singing like a scripture verse. It made me want to bow my head. I remember when church let out, how things have changed since then, 'cause everything is holy now. It used to be a world half there, heaven's second rate hand me down, but I walk it with a reverend air, 'cause everything is holy now.
So I just have to let you know that after you hear this sermon, two things are going to happen. One of two things are going to happen. You're going to say, oh, wow, now I know everything I need to know about that topic. Or you're going to say, I have to go out and buy the book. Just like when you see a movie, right? Some people actually go see the movie and then they read the book afterwards. Mostly people read the book first. And I did read this book, so it's going to change your life. Don't you just love it when those kind of books come across your path and you don't want them to end? Unitarian Universalists are the worst people to help when they're going to move. Too many books, voracious readers, collectors of books. They can't get rid of books, and if they do and you don't return them, you will be on a special list. It's like sharing a precious piece of jewelry or yourself. And if the book is returned, you might choose to read it just again. So when friends started recommending this book called The Swerve about a year ago, we had to decide if we were intrigued enough to get through the size of the book, and I was. This time that we're living in is a time that we have all information available to us. We can place, you could place right now, and I actually wouldn't be offended, if you place an order for groceries or wanted to check the exact years of the Crimean War and order your own copy of the book while we're speaking, and then Amazon would deliver it by tomorrow morning. And you can do this all within the comfort of your church or your home seat. When people in ancient times wanted to share a book, however, the monks who lived in isolated monasteries would hand copy the book. There were to be no deviations from that original. No discussions were to be had between the monks that were sitting next to each other about any of the material or anything else, or they would be reprimanded because they might be giving out the secret of the book, or they might transpose a sentence. And so it was very silent and very tedious work. After these Torah-like scrolls were used in the ancient world, then finally in the 14th century, paper would come into use. That would make the skins of animals the main writing material from that previous era. And during that time, a pumice stone would be scratched across the skins of the animals and to remove the hair to create a smooth surface so that the letters could be printed on it. Movable type created by Gutenberg in 1430 changed the reproduction of text, thank goodness. So one of my Italian friends, Poggio Bacaloni, I didn't know him personally, but he was on the trail of these ancient texts in the early 1400s. He traveled in all these extreme conditions to search out monasteries where Texts were being read and copied. Puggio had the good fortune of being given a very good job to serve clerics and eventually the Pope who was residing in Germany. After this, Pope John the 23rd was stripped of his title, accused of detestable living and put in prison. Poggio was out of a job. As a skilled writer, he served to handle documents for the bureaucracy behind the container of what goes on in Rome, which still has a lot of its secrets. These people that were writing these books were referred to as humanists. And that time it meant the humanists were people that studied the humanities. And so art and music and literature and science, etc. So in 60 BCE, 60 before Common Era, the poem called On the Nature of Things was written by Lucretius. It gives us an idea of what thoughts had evolved from superstition at the time that was often shared from the church teaching to, I don't know, heal, protect, control the people. But this doctrine, this 7,600 line poem brought together rational thought and science. And so the title of the book, the world swerved in a new direction because of this poem toward the glorious expressions of literature, music, inventions, and more during the Renaissance. The agent of change was not a revolution, but it was an army at the gates of landfall in an unknown continent. The epic change with which the Swerve is concerned over 600 years ago, of course, that's when he discovered it. He discovers this copy of On the Nature of Things, and he had it copied by some of these monks. That key moment was muffled and it was almost invisible. And then everything changed again. It was not given any attention until the 4th to the 9th century. And it was cited after being hand copied for centuries. So in other words, it went out of circulation for 1,000 years. So this is when I want to cement this or anchor this idea into all of our minds as Unitarian Universalists. What if that book in that poem, 7,600 line poem, would have been available to more people during that 1,000 years that it was out of circulation? It could have meant that the superstitious teachings and the teachings that were brought about to control people, the rational thought would have been alive and well and questioning, which did continue to happen in the 1400s. So this is when our connection to the Unitarians comes into place. In 1400, John Huss, of course, all of you know him, and you will know him even better in a minute. He was a Czech priest, and he was a reformer who called out the improprieties of the Catholic priest. He also called out the use of selling prayers, indulgences. He, of course, was excommunicated for his teachings and relying on God alone rather than the Virgin Mary and the saints and everybody else from the supporting cast. Sorry, couldn't think of another word. I mean that cast in capital letters. So King John Sigismund, anybody know him? Yay, you know King John. He was the king of Transylvania, and his books were burned at the stake. And he became the Unitarian king. And so everybody in Transylvania, or a lot of people, because the king had converted from Catholics to Unitarian, they became Unitarians. And so they were in support, remember, of the humanities. So on the nature of things, which if you decide to read the whole piece, it's kind of along the lines of the Ovid in the Latin poets, Virgil, etc. So the threat that this poem in 6 untitled books was referred to as the plague due to its threat on the Catholic Church teachings of the time. And so this was labeled, of course, if it's a threat, what do you label it? Atheist. That is not correct. Lucretius believed in the gods, small g, but did not believe that the gods were involved or impacted by the lives of humans. And so a non-personal God. He saw the gods were entirely removed and separated from our world, and that the gods were indifferent to any of our actions and didn't know if we ate waffles this morning or a good health bar. Whether good or bad, that's how he believed. He was born 100 years before Jesus was born and died 30 years before he was born. But he viewed it as absurd that the gods that were explained in the Old Testament were as powerful, and he was not interested in any of the human rituals or murmurings. So these are a couple of the core ideas that came from On Nature of the Things. Everything is made of invisible particles. Everything is formed by these invisible seed particles. They come together, are constantly in motion and clash, and then they come apart and recombine again, and they are enduring. And what is that? Atoms. And so here, somebody, how many years before Jesus was speaking about science in a spiritual way? Elementary particles of matter are eternal. Time is not limited, neither is the destructions of having an upper hand from somebody else. There is a balance in the sum total of matter, and it's always restored. So the contents between the elements is an equal one. George Santayana called this idea the ceaseless mutation of forms composed of indestructible substances, the greatest thought that the humankind has ever hit upon. So why did we have to go sideways? Why wasn't this more popular? Because it was silenced. The universe has no creator or designer. Particles have not been made and cannot be destroyed. The patterns of order and disorder are not a product of a divine scheme. Providence is a fantasy. All of this written so many years before the tales and the teachings of Jesus. The swerve is the source of free will. The random swerve of elementary particles is responsible for the existence of free will of all sentient beings, humans and animals alike. So for centuries, the church, encapsulated with creeds, provided the people with what to believe and regulated the intellectual property of the time. Only the priest, even in my time, which is getting to be older by the minute, but even in my time, we weren't allowed to read the Holy Scriptures pre-Vatican II, because only the priest could interpret that for you. So by the late 1960s, Catholics were being discouraged to do anything but listen to the homily as it was interpreted from the Bible. So if this scientific rational explanation of the conditions of humanity would have been more popular, imagine how things could have been different. So this is what I want to bring to your idea of how does this swerve have anything to do with me? So what the point they're making is this book was like the precursor that could allow space for the free will of the people that wrote famous literature, the artists, the musicians, etc. There needed to be a space of thought and time and a free will of expression. And so what is the swerve in your life? When has the swerve happened in your life that you couldn't turn back any longer? You could just move forward. Some of you would say coming to a Unitarian Universalist church was part of your swerve. I remember back in 1976, that was the year of my independence from my previous religious thought. I couldn't believe there was a group of people in an official church that believed like I did, and we were encouraged to ask questions, and we weren't criticized for that, because in my family, they just thought, woo, whenever I expressed any of my true beliefs about anything, they just figured I had been, the aliens had picked me up and dropped me back off and scrambled something. And so when I found the Unitarian Universalist Church, they weren't that friendly in the very beginning. I came from the wrong side of town. However, I wasn't going to be stopped. I looked at that pamphlet rack and I read everything on there, and I'm like, if these people believe half of this and practice a quarter of it, I'm staying, and I did. So as one who engages in conversation, how do you approach the swerve, not just in your life or sharing this information with anybody else? This is where affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of each person. That means if you're discussing this with somebody that has different beliefs, be curious about their beliefs and ask them to be curious about yours. Curious rather than judgmental. That's what it means to be a Unitarian Universalist. It doesn't mean my way or the highway. It doesn't mean that you're supposed to be a fundamentalist. When all of the people in my family start voting for, going to my church, then they're evolved and wonderful. No, they're already evolved and wonderful, and they've had a different path. And so curiosity is the name of the game. And so when you start referring to gods and someone says, well, I only believe in one God, you can give a compliment. You can say, well, I'm glad that that course is serving your life well, because you respect the relationship, or you wouldn't be in that deep of a conversation with them in the first place. So back to our friend Lucretius. He studied the work of Epicurus, and he looked at age 12, asking questions of his teachers and moving away from superstition. The single incandescent idea that everything that has ever existed and everything that will ever exist is put together out of this indestructible building blocks, small in size, unimaginable, vast in number. The Greeks had a word for those building blocks, and they were atoms. And this week, we went the other direction in the last 2 weeks. I think if it weren't for the swerve, I don't think we would have gotten to the James Webb telescope. I don't think we would have gotten to know, not just know, but see at the level that we have seen all the galaxies and the stars and the wonders. And so maybe we're the only intelligent life that overeats until we kill ourselves because our cholesterol is so high. There may be somebody else on another planet that believes, that treats the world like that. We might be unique, but now we know that there is much more territory to travel. And without the swerve, and maybe miniature swerves along the way, this was a big swerve, but maybe other swerves are along the way, including the swerves that the Unitarian Universalists have taken. And all the people that you know that practice their religion, there have been swerves within their traditions too. I remember when I was growing up, my friend who was a Church of Christ, she couldn't wear slacks, she couldn't play cards, and she couldn't dance. And now they can do it all in one generation. So a swerve, because what did one thing have to do with another thing? They were trying to decipher their sacred book. And they were deciphering the sacred book was different at different times. This is what happened with Lucretius. And so when you look at all of his teachings and the fact that even Thomas Jefferson and Isaac Newton were aware of him, that is the end of the formal sermon. But it's also the teaser for you to get the book. Because if you do, you will have something to talk about at every party upcoming. So this is what Thomas Jefferson said. He said, I am the one who wanted to know that his philosophy of life was an Epicurean. Isn't that exciting? Do any of you know of 9 units, the Enneagram? If any of you heard of the Enneagram? Well, in the Enneagram, the number 7 is an Epicurean. What does an Epicurean want to do? Let me ask. An Epicurean is so excited about whatever they find out, they want to share it with everyone. And so Thomas Jefferson saw himself as an Epicurean, and you might see yourself as one as well, after you continue to find out more about the swerve and be patient with your swerves in your life. So be it. Namaste.